Good morning, everyone. Happy Hump Day and welcome to day 3 of the conference. We will get started in just a minute. Well, that minute went quick. We were doing some last minute checking, making sure all of our technology worked with our presenters. So thank you for joining us for day 3. And as you see on the screen, these are our presenters for today. We've got some very interesting topics to discuss and share with you. Hopefully everyone has joined us before this week or is somewhat familiar with GoToWebinar. I just want to remind everybody you're brought and muted, but we want you to ask questions. So either type those in the question box, or if it's something you would rather ask verbally at the once our presenters are done, to use the hand raising function. So you should see a little hand in a column up near your name. Click that and we will recognize you and we'll unmute you, and you may have to unmute yourself. But if you have any other issues, put them in the chat box and we will try and help you. But otherwise, we're going to get started this morning. We have a panel discussion about sustainability initiatives for laboratories, and that all right, here goes the tongue twisting for today. That includes Caitlin Hartman from the US EPA's RTP campus, Dr. Randy Smith, and Rebecca Huffler from Duke University. Caitlin Hartman is the Environmental Compliance Manager and one of the 3 EMS coordinators for the Environmental Protection Agency in the Research Triangle Park campus. She has worked for EPA for a total of 10 years, 5 as an EH&S support contractor, and the last 5 as a federal employee. Prior to her EPA career, Caitlin was an ES&H contractor assisting multiple government laboratory facilities and pharmaceutical companies throughout the country, and Caitlin has a passion for sustainability at work and at home. Dr. Randy Smith manages the Department of Biology at Duke University and is the founder of Green Labs at Duke, which he established in 2012. He is also the treasurer for the local chapter of the International Institute for Sustainable Laboratories. And prior to coming to Duke in 1994, he was a research scientist with Miller Brewing Company. I like beer. Lastly, but not least, Rebecca Huffler is going to also speak today, and she's a program coordinator for Duke University's Office of Sustainability. She leads their communication and outreach initiatives to enable all members of the Duke community to contribute to the university's carbon neutrality goal. Rebecca provides educational workshops for different departments and classes and oversees the Green Certification Program. She has worked in higher education sustainability since graduating Union College in 2012 with a degree in environmental policy. Thank you, Caitlin, Rebecca, and Dr. Smith for your insight into Green Labs. And Caitlin, when you're ready, you can start.
Okay, thank you. Let's see.
Let me,
okay. Can you see my slides? Let me see.
Yes, yep, and they're in full screen. You're perfect.
I just need to get the all right. Okay, so thank you for having me. I'm going to talk briefly about our facility at the Environmental Protection Agency, our facility in Research Triangle Park for a little bit, and about some of the things that we've done to try to green our labs. Just to give you a little bit of information about our facility here in RTP, we are a shared campus with the National Institute of Environmental Health. We share a 550-acre campus that sits on a very nice man-made lake. We have 1.2 million square feet of office, laboratory, computer, and conference spaces. We are the largest facility ever built by EPA, meaning that we are not a leased facility through GSA. We maintain our own buildings and our own campus. And we host 15 different EPA offices within our building, with 3 of those offices being our main 3. So you'll see here we've got on our EMS team, it's supported by 3 of those main offices I just discussed. The Office of Mission Support, which is where I sit, and I'm the EMS coordinator for that. We're basically where our facility operations sit within the OMS group. We have facility engineers and support services, and we do a lot of our large-scale facility projects. Then we have the Office of Research Development, and Julia Alderetti is our coordinator for ORD, and that's where our National Research Centers sit, where all of our laboratory operations are kind of controlled out of, and where our research scientists sit. Then the third major organization that we have that sits on our campus is the Office of Air and Radiation, and Denise Scott is our EMS coordinator for that. And that's where we've got our folks who develop national programs and policies that are related to air pollution. So we have a unique, I don't know why my slides keep going backwards, but we have a unique, I think, EMS as we co-coordinate our efforts here. All right, to dive right into what we're talking about today is Green Labs. So I took this information right from the My Green Lab program, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. It's something that we've decided to try to do at our facility, and we're just in the beginning stages of that. But why is it important for a Green Lab program? Well, you know, laboratories are very resource intensive spaces. So looking at the slide, you'll see, you know, they're 10 times more energy intensive than office spaces, just because of the type of equipment and the air handling that needs to happen in them. They use 4 times more water than office spaces. You know, you've got things like autoclaves and distillations and glassware that needs, you know, washing. You also are seeing folks using more DI water and other types of high purity water systems. And they're producing quite a lot of plastic that come out of our lab spaces every year. So the number here is showing 12 billion pounds of waste each year. So they're very resource intensive spaces, and it's important that we focus on what we're doing in those spaces. So what our facility in the EPA RTP, we kind of take a 2-pronged approach to this. Where I've already talked about, we have our facilities department, and we focus a lot on these large scale facility related programs that help us with our energy and water consumption. And then we have these lab initiated programs where we're focusing on things in the lab, you know, what type of things we're purchasing, what type of equipment we're using. And so we combine those to really make an impact, or try to make a big impact on our campus and our energy and water reduction specifically, well, and waste as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both of those. I have a video that I'm going to show. I hope that it works out well. And Matt Pate, who is our energy and water conservation manager, kind of takes you through a little bit of a tour of our facility and a couple of the projects that we've done to focus on energy and water reduction on the campus. Again, I don't know why my slides keep going backwards. So let me see and try to get this video working. Kind of showing you some of our larger facilities related projects. And I wanted to then just take a moment to, on the flip side of that, talk about some of our labs and how our labs themselves work on becoming, you know, greener. And you'll see here, some of these are, we've talked about some of them here. So, you know, purchasing, we're constantly looking at ways to.
Caitlin, can you share your presentation again?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
It didn't pop back up.
Thank you. All right. Am I showing the
Yes,
the
we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. So, and I hope the video came through okay. So just some of the things we're trying to do in our labs, purchasing less toxic chemicals. We have a chemical adoption program where folks who no longer need a chemical in their lab, they can bring it down to our chem services department, and then hopefully somebody else, rather than purchasing that, they'll look there first and use what we have in stock. We also do an annual inventory and track all of our refrigerant containing equipment on site, not just ODSs. So everything is tracked, and we try to encourage our PIs to make sure that they're doing appropriate maintenance on that equipment. We also do a lot of access. We do a lot of our property accessing. We find alternatives to access rather than just a land disposal. So we'll either donate it or find ways to recycle those. We're also looking at additional ways for recycling things that come out of our laboratories. Recycling lab glass is a newer program for us, and we're constantly looking at ways to further increase what we're able to recycle that's coming out of our labs. It's a little bit more difficult situation when things are coming from the lab. People tend to get a little bit scared about exactly what's coming out of the lab. And then, and then the last thing on here, so I'm not taking up too much time, is the My Green Labs program, which is something that we're, as I mentioned before, going to be kicking off here in November for our labs. And this is what I'm kind of considering to be more of a grassroots program for our laboratories, and it will be a voluntary program for our labs to sign up, and kind of gives them ownership of increasing their sustainability in the labs that they work in, and make them feel proud of, and encourage them to make some changes within their lab. And we'll be able to, we're hoping that their efforts will be recognized through decals on their lab doors and communications with our campus, as well as our entire organization. And so we're really excited about starting that program in the next month. So that's all I had for today. I think, are we doing questions now? My dog has some questions.
We're going to hold the Q&A until after the whole panel. So I'm going to send the controls over to you, Randy. You should see that now.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you just fine and see your slides just fine.
Okay, great. So I am Randy Smith. I'm manager of the biology department at Duke University. Correction on my introduction earlier, I do not hold a PhD, so it is not doctor. It's just me. So in 2012, Duke was very involved in trying to take make a big push in sustainability. And I was actually, at the time, I was in the biology department, but our Dean of Arts and Sciences had asked me to be the liaison between the facilities engineers and arts and sciences on their big projects, things like temperature control and water reduction, building-wide stuff. And it got us to thinking, a group of lab managers and myself, we got together and, okay, what can the occupants of the lab do? I mean, there's got to be something we can do too. So we started looking around, and well, before I say that, let's talk about why. I mean, the impacts, like Caitlin was talking about, the impacts of the laboratories are incredibly energy intensive compared to non-laboratory spaces. The labs also use more water and generate hazardous material waste. So this is some data from Duke, and you can see you've got the buildings on the right side, there's 5 of them there. Those are some of our big research buildings. And on the left side, we've got some of our non-research buildings. And this is the energy use per square foot. So you can see, for example, the Phytotron is way up there. The Phytotron, if you don't know what that is, it's a building that houses, in our case, 68 plant growth chambers. So it's basically lots of lights in boxes. So with water, water is used in labs for all kinds of stuff. Equipment cooling, making DI water. Making DI water takes water. You use about 2 gallons for every gallon you make. Sterilizers, those are a really big water use. Pipette and dishwashers, that sort of thing. Chemical waste. Now these are old numbers, but you can see the trend hadn't stopped. In 2011, we had 72,000 pounds of hazardous waste to do. In 2013, it's 87,000. I don't know what it is today. I'm almost scared to ask. But hazardous waste is about 25% of that. So it's a problem. So we talked about what we could do in the lab, and we didn't know where to start. This is pretty early on in the old Green Labs movement, and so what we did is we did some digging, see what other people were doing, and I have to give a lot of credit to some other universities, some folks that I've met through the years at some other universities in particular. University of California, Davis, and University of California, Santa Barbara, they were really, they were on the cutting edge back in the day, so to speak. Their group at UC Santa Barbara is called Lab Rats, which I thought was perfect, and I wish we could have used that. But, and then there's a program in the UK that we were taking a look at, and also one at Yale. And nowadays, I would say the University of Colorado Boulder is one of the leading schools as far as having solid sustainability programs. So I have to give credit to those folks. We did not reinvent the wheel. We just took what they did and tried to adapt it to our situation. So it was an Olympic year. So we came up with 3 levels of certification when we went to certify a lab. It was bronze, silver, and gold, with the idea that would incentivize people to, go for the gold, right? And the way we set this up is we created a checklist. So this is the things we thought were important that need to be done. And I forgot how many items are on the checklist. It was at least 50. And then there's certain things on that checklist that, if you can't do that, there's no way you can be considered sustainable. And so we called those prerequisites. So you had to get the prerequisites. And if you got the prerequisites, we would give you a bronze level certification. If you got the prerequisites plus, a certain number of points, you would get the silver. And if you got even more points, you got gold. Now, we had to recognize that not all labs had the opportunity to score some of these points. Some of these labs, like an ecology lab, for example, they don't have the same chemical waste, for example, necessarily that a molecular biology lab has. So we had to, we did it on a percentage basis of what was applicable to your particular lab. And really the meat and potatoes of the certification was the certification checklist guide. It's a 6-page explanation of what we're looking for each of the certification points. And I can distribute that to, I don't think I sent that to the coordinators of the conference, but I can do that. So I hate for anybody else to reinvent the wheel, put it that way. So the Green Lab certification at Duke focuses on these 8 areas: management and training. That's basically talking about it in your lab meetings, that sort of thing. Energy conservation, that is a big one. You know, shutting the sash on your fume hood. Fume hoods are incredibly, we calculated a few years back that it costs $5,000 a year to run a fume hood at Duke University if you leave the sash open all the time. I've got one building that's got 280 of those things. So if you do the math, you can see this is it's a big deal. And so one of the prerequisites for getting a green lab certification at Duke is you shut that fume hood sash when you're not using it. Now, if the full disclosure is if you don't have a variable volume fume hood, that's really not going to do anything, except it still provides a measure of safety. But if you've got a constant volume fume hood, the air is just rerouted and you're still spending the money. Water conservation. You know, back in 2000, 2008, this area, if you were in this area back then, you know that, or you may remember that we had a severe drought. Duke had to take some very serious steps to basically continue operation. I'm not going to talk about the what those steps were, but we're honestly, last couple of years ago, we opened a reclamation pond for the chilled water system. So I mean, it's that sort of thing. Chemical storage and use, that's a biggie. Green purchasing, that's a biggie. I think Rebecca's going to talk about that later. Recycling and waste reduction. Field work. So when we started this whole thing, honestly, I came from a molecular biology background. So that's kind of where the focus is. We certified, or we wrote a certification program for what we knew. And the lab managers, they were from molecular biology backgrounds too. And then we ran into an ecology lab that did field work, and we thought, oh gosh, you know, we got to come up with some criteria for them. And it really got interesting when it came to the Duke Marine Lab, because one of the field work requirements is to remove your, you know, leave no trace, just like when you're hiking, you leave no trace. We required them to remove the stakes that they use, you know, to establish an ecology plot that they're studying. Well, the Marine Lab, they had a question. They want to know, did they have to dive back underwater and remove the stakes? And the question then became, what are the stakes made of? And well, they were wooden, and they weren't treated lumber or anything like that. They were just wood. Well, we decided, you know, those will rot. You don't have to pull them back up. Meeting and conference travel. Well, as we all learned from the pandemic, you know, Zoom works great. So, you know, if you can do that, you get credit for that, or you can buy carbon offsets for your travel. So right now, actually, it's at Duke we have 81 labs certified because one of them just got certified virtually this week. The pandemic has removed the opportunity to one step of the certification process. Once somebody entered all the information and we came up with a score, we would go visit them, and that was an educational opportunity. The pandemic has eliminated that, at least temporarily. So we can't go to the lab and, you know, see what they've done and talk to them about it. Generally speaking, we found out people cheated themselves out of points because they didn't quite understand exactly what we're asking for. So we've got, like I said, 81 labs certified, and those are in arts and sciences, School of Environment, Marine Lab, Engineering, and Medicine. Switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about some of the projects that the Green Labs group has come up with the support of the Dean's office and the facilities. I talked about the phytotrome having all these growth chambers. Well, this is a picture of one of them. They had very high energy intensive incandescent light bulbs and other kinds of light bulbs too. But what we did several projects actually to convert those to highly energy efficient metal halide bulbs. And now we've got projects that are converted into LED bulbs. This was a project that I don't remember the exact dollar cost, but when we did the energy analysis and the cost analysis, it turns out we were able to pay for this in 14 months. So our ROI was 14 months. That was pretty impressive, we thought. Another project, this was energy efficient ultra low freezers. That's one of the big hogs, energy hogs in a laboratory, next to the fume hood anyway. So we started this project and we learned, well not learned, but I guess this really pointed out to everyone two very important factors when you do these sort of things. And one was, life cycle cost, total life cycle cost. It's not just the cost of a piece of equipment, but there's also the maintenance costs and the energy costs to run it that present you with the total cost of ownership. A lot of people never got past the purchase price. They're like, oh, these other freezers are cheaper. Well, they are cheaper. And in 5 years, you're going to regret that because you have paid, so many dollars more in energy costs that you could have bought the other freezer and, saved yourself money. So total lifetime cost was one concept that really came to light with this particular project. Another one was you really have to align the financial incentives, at least in an academic setting, with who benefits from the project. I'll give you an example. The faculty have to buy their own freezers. I mean, they get grants and things like that, but they have to spend basically their money to buy a freezer. And if they only have to, but they don't pay the power bill. They don't get the power bills. So if they're out shopping for a freezer, they don't care about energy efficiency unless they're just, very altruistic. They're interested in, I want to keep my samples cold and I want to do it as cheap as possible for me. So they'll buy a $10,000 freezer, an $8,000 freezer, or something like that. And the dean's office has to pay the power bill until that freezer is, replaced. So in this project, what we did is I went to the dean's office and asked for a funding for a rebate program where if the faculty member would purchase the energy efficient freezer, the dean's office would rebate them the difference in cost between the less efficient freezer and the more efficient freezer. And then the dean's office would recoup their money through their less power bills. And so that's worked really well. We bought about 40 freezers that way. Another project was the Shut the Sash project. It costs you absolutely nothing to pull that sash down. And the savings is incredible if you have variable volume hoods, which almost all new laboratories have variable volume hoods. I don't know if anybody's installing those constant volume things anymore. The only cost was the price of the sticker. You can see it on the in front of the sash there, the little green. Another nice project we did was condensers for the chemistry labs. So the chemistry labs were doing these, oh gosh, I'm not a chemist, but they were doing these reactions that they needed to cool their reaction vessels with water. And what they were doing was what we would call single pass cooling, which is a huge no-no in the sustainability world. So what they would do is they hook up a tube to the water faucet and run it, the other end of the tube to their equipment, run the cold water out, that's drinking water, right out of the faucet into the equipment, cool it down, and then drain it right down the sink. So basically, you're taking drinking quality water and throwing it into the sewer and getting, you pay your water bill and you pay your sewer bill. So these contraptions on the top of this flask here are, they're called condensers, and they're air cooling devices. They're air cooled devices. So we were able to eliminate the water entirely. Instead of even going to a recirculating ice bath, we just started using we had the Green Labs program get money from the dean's office to provide the chemistry department with about 80 of these things. And it was another project where we recouped our money within a year. And the chemistry department's very happy with them. Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to wrap up real quick here. A couple of resources. Well, three. I guess it's more than a couple. International Institute for Sustainable Laboratories. That is an international organization, as it indicates in the name, that is all about green labs and green laboratories. And that, members are people from, sustainability offices, engineers, facility engineers, vendors that supply equipment, like Lab Conco's there, Sterling Freezers are there, Thermo Fisher's there, all these people that are have members, and they just had a conference just recently. Their annual conference was just recently in Atlanta. Another resource for folks is IS2L, the North Carolina Triangle chapter. I happen to be the treasurer of that. We're a group from around this area that we get together and we try to do symposiums and things like that locally. Of course, everything's on hiatus because of the pandemic. And, facility tours, that sort of thing, where, just exchange information, to make contact with people, that sort of thing. And then there's My Green Lab, which Caitlin referred to. And really, they are probably the premier organization for learning how to green your lab, as their name would indicate. They're an international resource. But if you go to their website, you can find out all kinds of information. And that's it. That's pretty much what I've got. So I'll be looking forward to questions at the end of the program.
Thanks, Randy. And Rebecca shared the checklist, so that is now in everybody's chat box, and I'm getting the links to those two websites up as well. So Rebecca, let me hand this over to you. There you go. Oops.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca. I'm excited to talk with you all today about how to spread the word about the program that Caitlin and Randy have talked about with our Green Lab certification program at Duke. We're going to focus on education, outreach and engagement, and my cat wants to play right now. So we are going to talk a little bit about how to reach the different audiences in your institutions to promote this program. A little bit of background about why Duke promotes these voluntary environmental programs. That is what a green checklist is. It's not something that's mandated from the top down from leadership or that is required. It is a voluntary program where we provide incentives and opportunities for people to participate with and get them excited to join this program where they can make a difference in their local workplace. Our 2019 Climate Action Plan lays out a few sectors that are really important for the university to make reductions in order to meet our 2024 carbon neutrality goal. And we're going to talk about how some of these sectors play into Green Lab certification so that we can connect the individual action of certifying a lab to the larger climate action plan and carbon neutrality goal. Some of the recommendations in the energy sector include things like increasing the efficiency of buildings on campus. This one is really important. About 10% of our total emissions at Duke come from the energy from building use. So enabling energy intensive spaces like labs to reduce their energy consumption is something that's really important. Both Caitlin and Randy talked about how much more energy a lab takes up than a space like a classroom. And it's really important to educate key decision makers on campus about this unique difference to the spaces that they have in their different silos. We have a lot of different schools, different departments. Not all labs are the same. Some of them have different technologies, some of them have kind of less of a demand and different requirements that they need in order to meet their lab work. In our communication recommendations, we have a couple different pathways in which we can help encourage the Duke community to participate in these programs by hosting departmental specific workshops about sustainability at Duke. And this is something that you can reach out to your sustainability office to connect with on that. So when I lead a workshop, I really try to frame it to the specific department that I'm speaking to so that I can really resonate with that audience, get them engaged, get them excited about the programs because they can see themselves and this work, their work in this program. Develop departmental or school-specific climate action plans. This is what I'm going to reference in a few slides after this. We're going to talk about a really, really effective program led by a dean to make his school sustainable. And then bolster the green certification program for workplaces, labs, classroom, dorms, and events. So we don't just have a green lab certification, we have a few more that cover all the different audiences at Duke. And so this slide will have, I think, the most text out of the rest of them, but it is really important to talk about these different effective communication techniques so that you can engage the audiences at your institutions. When we talk about developing that robust network of sustainability champions, it's really important to understand the different silos of audiences and their levels of engagement. So we have a lot of students, staff, and faculty who are part of the engaged and interested group. We also have a lot of people who fit into the disengaged but interested group. And then of course, the last one is going to be the disengaged and uninterested. And quite usually we try to focus a lot of our energy on the last two because we want to engage those who have not participated with our programming, who don't see themselves in this programming. So we work on outreach to those groups by creating different frameworks, meeting them where they are. And this is kind of the opposite. We actually want to identify those stakeholders on campus who are activated and engaged, and then as well as, of course, bringing in others. But by identifying those who are activated and engaged, we're able to have more options for peer-to-peer conversations, which always tend to be the most effective form of communication when you want people to adopt a behavior change or adopt a different program. Developing that formal network of these champions who are advocates and ambassadors of sustainability at Duke. So that is a kind of separate step. You want to be able to educate them, create structures for them to communicate with. So this could be a listserv of these different champions. It could also be regular lunch and learns where you ask different stakeholders involved in this group to actually kind of lead a lesson about how they certified their lab, what barriers they had, how they overcame those barriers, so that you can kind of help educate other people at Duke. We can learn best practices, we can help learn how to overcome those barriers. So it takes a little bit of a different format than just identifying those activated stakeholders. And then gathering the stories from these champions and sharing those experiences with the Duke community has a very, very strategic advantage when we talk about PR and we talk about what do deans want to see, and the higher level admin want stories that they can share on their websites and on their newsletters. And it's really great when you have sustainability offices who are highlighting these efforts so that we can help share and spread the message. And then higher level admin get really excited because they can help share that with their audiences as well. Another really effective recommendation for getting people involved and going back to that PR framework is hosting a recognition ceremony. So we have the Sustainability Awards every April, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. You'll see what the award looks like and how we actually got an activated champion for Green Lab certification to win an award this past year, or 2 years ago. And then provide sustainability challenges to sustainability champions. And then also I would expand this a little bit to the school at large and newsletter recipients. So we have had some very successful challenges across Duke's campus where Teams are able to be formed either by department or interdepartmentally so that they can participate in these prompts, challenges, certifications, and win a prize at the end. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Going back to what Randy mentioned and the start of the Green Labs program in 2012, you can kind of see a trend of how quick the pace can be in certifying labs when you do have a competition. So the first year of certification at Duke, 10 certified Green Labs. The following year was 2 years before I got to Duke, and I wish I had been here because the battle, the Green Devil Smackdown is the official name of this competition, but it was a battle of the schools because schools competed against each other. And it was epically successful. There was a 390% increase in the number of Green Lab certified spaces on campus. And I'll actually have a picture at the end of this presentation of the winners of that competition. They actually won a wrestling belt. It was really wonderful, and a lot of people really wanted to win that belt. And you can see what the pace is when we don't have a challenge, kind of a unifying message to get people to be engaged in this. Of course, we've had major slowdowns for the past years because of the pandemic, but we had some good a couple years after the Battle of the Schools program getting lab certified. We were able to do this because we had that robust network of activated champions. We actually utilized students. So we utilized summer researchers who were here for the summer specifically for different scholarships and programs, PIs who would help lead the effort in their labs. But being able to kind of have different formats that you want that education to take place can be really helpful too. So going back to this climate action plan, we're going to talk about the sustainability strategic plan because the strategic plan is really the roadmap as to how we're going to meet the goals set in our climate action plan. And again, the different focus areas that relate to Green Labs are going to be emissions, water, waste, and procurement. And to talk a little bit about water, Randy had mentioned the reclamation pond that Duke installed. And this is a photo of it. It's a beautiful space that holds about 100 million gallons of water a year. It collects rainwater runoff from about 23% of the impervious surfaces of campus. To the left of the line of trees is our chilled water plant that provides the chilled water to most of campus within a 15-mile closed loop pipe system. And it really is a wonderful way to have the university lessen our dependency on potable water, be a better neighbor to Durham by not taking up as many water resources, especially as we continue to see the exacerbated intense weather events with climate change. Being self-sufficient in resources can be really helpful. And just to mention a little bit about procurement, procurement is a big bear to tackle. We know that a lot of emissions come from this sector, and this is a scope 3 emission sector. So it's not something we have direct or indirect control over. So when we have the ability to buy things, we don't have the ability to control the entire life cycle of that product. We don't even have a standard consumption-based inventory, emissions inventory for measuring the impact of these products that we buy. And that is a big missing sector for us in terms of metrics. It's also something a lot of universities and us are starting to trying and wrap our heads around. And even though we don't have control over that sector, we do have control over what we buy. And there is a lot of power for the procurement managers at Duke when they say, you know, I want to see what you have in terms of a more sustainable option for this product. Vendors don't want to lose out on contracts, so they can really sometimes go above and beyond to help meet the needs of their customer. And so that's why we really encourage and support the procurement managers when they say, do you have a more sustainable product? Or when they want to aggregate their purchases among offices, that's a really great way to save waste as well. And just to understand a little bit about where we count our green labs. The geographic boundary for our carbon neutrality goal includes the university, the marine lab, the School of Medicine, and School of Nursing. And what's excluded is the health system, those different leased assets. So that could be different health clinics, it could be departments that are off campus in leased spaces, and then of course our international campus in Kunshan. And the reason we have this type of very specific geographic boundary was back in 2007, when President Broadhead signed the American College and University President's Climate Commitment, he joined about 100 other signatories in rising to the challenge to address climate change on their campus. And what Duke really wanted to do was ensure that we could work together with our peer institutions. And so by creating a boundary that was similar to our peers, we would be able to do other work down the road, which includes today an Ivy Plus consortium of a data working group, a carbon offset group, and the ability to work together to compare metrics, to talk about barriers, to see how other institutions overcame those barriers. And it's a really wonderful working method. Just because the excluded spaces aren't counted in the climate action plan or the greenhouse gas analysis does not mean they're excluded from participating in the certifications and being a green devil. A lot of the health system employees really see themselves just as much as a green devil for a university employee. And it's really wonderful because they participate in our green workplace certification, green event certification, and we have 8 green certified labs at our Duke Main Hospital, and that's the hospital that's located right off of main campus here in Durham. And I can cut through this slide pretty quickly. We've talked a lot about the importance of reducing energy in labs. So we know that they take up a lot more energy than typical spaces on campus, like even a dorm, classrooms. Even when we host events in larger spaces, we can have a lot more energy efficient spaces than a lab. There are different requirements. I wanted to note that when Randy had talked about Shut the Sash campaign at Duke, and that's a really great representation of a behavior change when we cannot create a technology change. And usually we say, if you can't change the behavior, change the technology to do it for them, automate the process. There is benefit in helping people understand behavior change and the importance of that, because it can still make a huge difference when people participate in sustainable actions within their labs and workplaces. I'd like to kind of end with a great example of what happens when you have top-down leadership as well as bottom-up engagement among a school. So we had in about 2019, the Dean of the Engineering School at Pratt, Dean Ravi, led the Green Engineering campaign for the entire School of Engineering. And as a sustainability professional, I can't tell you how great it is to be in a meeting and see the dean of a school pick up a plastic water bottle in a meeting and say, why is this here? And we're going to get rid of all of these in our school. And the way he organized this campaign was by using our green certifications as a framework and a structure. So he created a committee for green workplace certification, green event certification, green lab certification, and then utilized his communications team internally at Pratt to form the communications committee, which is really important because if you're doing all this great work, you want to show others at Duke that it's possible and that they can be engaged and do this as well. And you can see on the bottom right, they had their own award ceremony where they awarded labs that had certified within the time period of this campaign. And that isn't even our sustainability awards. This is their own ceremony that they decided to have. It was really wonderful to see a top-down leadership role in this, but we also saw a lot of bottom-up action. We're going to talk about that activated stakeholder in just a minute. Another really effective communications technique this school utilized was the website that they created. They created their own green engineering website, which is really helpful because the staff at Pratt were able to go on this website and access all the different resources that existed on our sustainability website. And although they could have accessed this information on our website, by letting them kind of frame it and tailor it to their audience, to their community, I think it probably was even more effective because they were able to engage them where people were at, where they were used to going, and it turned out to be really effective. You can actually see on the left an older Green Lab certification presentation that was used and used by our Outstanding Leadership and Sustainability in the Student Category Award winner, Trisha Dubnock, who I knew back even before Green Engineering. She is one of the examples of an activated stakeholder. I knew her from her volunteer efforts with our Zero Waste Picnic, which is a zero waste picnic for first-year students at Duke. Learned about her work getting her PhD at Pratt in environmental engineering. And so when green engineering happened, Tricia was not only at the table, but she was someone who had a relationship with the sustainability office already. And she knew exactly what to do in order to kind of communicate the importance of this to her peers. She worked with another student to hold lunch and learns where she gave presentations on the importance of Green Lab certification. And again, another communications technique that is really effective is providing those incentives like awards and publicity in newsletters. This is an example of the sustainability awards. We get these wonderful sliced wood awards where we engrave them with the winner's name, and we have our own articles on our newsletter. It gets shared on the Working at Duke, which is the Duke Today main newsletter website. And then the Pratt School is also able to not only write their own articles, but share the ones that are already existing.
Rebecca, we've just got about a minute left, but we don't have any questions right now. So
no worries. Just again, celebrating those efforts and actions. And I'll just end with this because we have a great picture of the man, the myth, the legend, Duke's resident Green Labs expert, Randy Smith, on the top right, back in that Green Devils Smackdown Battle of the Schools competition. And what's really great is you can actually see the winners of that competition that year was Pratt. Again, it was the green engineering campaign that started almost a decade ago that Dean Robbie reinvigorated, and here they are with that great belt that they won. It was a lot of fun from what I've heard. If you have any questions, want to talk more, please feel free to email me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk more about effective communication campaigns you can implement at your institutions.
Great. Thanks, Rebecca and Randy and Caitlin. All very, very interesting stuff. And I think our folks will be able to get a lot out of it. We've put the links to the 2 websites that were mentioned, as well as Duke's Green Labs checklist into the chat box. And while we don't have any questions yet, if you want to type a really quick one, we can potentially take 1 or 2, but there is one kudos for you. So it says, love hearing that more and more colleges and universities are working to become green, sustainable, especially in their labs. The Battle of the Schools sustainability competition was brilliant. Kudos to Duke. So there you go. Not seeing any more questions unless people are hurriedly typing away. So I'm going to say thank you very, very much. And that was perfect timing because it's 10:30, and that gives us time to move on to our next speaker. Thank you all so much.
yes, thank you, Caitlin, Rebecca, and Randy. And I think that was probably me who snuck the doctor in there. So that's your honorary Dr. Randy doctorate. All right. We had a question pop in, Angela.
It says this is great. We'll share with our
Okay.
universities here in Louisiana.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So thank you to the 3 of you. For our second session this morning, we have staff from the Division of Energy, Minerals, and Land Resources, Industrial Stormwater Program, and we're going to hear from Brianna Young. Brianna graduated from UNC Chapel Hill with a BS in Environmental Science and an MS in Environmental Sciences and Engineering. Previously, before Edmr, she worked with the US EPA, assisting in the development of integrated science assessments, or ISAs, for criteria air pollutants, and has currently been working with DEQ for 5 years. Her professional focus while at the department had been in MPDS wastewater permitting and compliance, but she recently transitioned to the stormwater program as an individual industrial permits coordinator. So Brianna, thank you for joining us. And I see your presentation, so you are good to go.
And you can hear me okay?
I can, perfect.
Right, great. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Brianna Young. I'm the new industrial individual permits coordinator here with the stormwater program. I've only been here for about a month and a half, so still relatively new, getting my feet under me. But today I'm going to be giving an overview of the industrial program as a whole. Okay, there we go. So there are 5 programs under the stormwater umbrella. There's the NPDES industrial permits, NPDES MS4 permits, construction and post-construction stormwater, and the water supply watershed. Looking specifically at industrial stormwater permits, I'm going to talk about the components of an industrial permit, the types of industrial permits, and recent revisions to those permits, laserfish, EDMR, and chrome air compliance. So there's two components of an NPDES industrial stormwater permit. First is the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, which discusses site maps, has a description of the industrial processes and stormwater treatment, talks about spill prevention and response, secondary containment, and employee training. The second component of an NPDES industrial stormwater permit is sampling at the outfalls. There's both quantitative and qualitative parameters, and there's a tiered response if the benchmarks are exceeded. However, I would like to emphasize that benchmarks are not limits, and that an exceedance of a benchmark is not a permit violation. However, not responding per the tiered actions would be a violation. So there's four types of industrial stormwater permits. There's general permits, individual permits, no exposure certifications, and construction permits. This is just a map showing the locations of all the industrial permits in the state. As you can see, we have over 3,000 general permits, about 160 individual permits, and over 800 no exposure certifications. I would like to point out that this map does not show the construction stormwater permits. So focusing in on the industrial general permits, these cover a category or categories of industry. The permits are publicly noticed for 30 days and they last for 5 years once they are issued. Facilities that qualify can apply for and receive a certificate of coverage or COC under the general permit for their industry. As long as the annual fees are paid up to date, then the certificate of coverage will be automatically renewed when the general permit is renewed. Also of note is that we no longer mail certificates of coverage. However, there is an online request form that you can fill out if you would like to have one. So kind of talking about the revisions to general permits. In 2021, there were a number of general permits that were renewed that contained a number of revisions, and these included providing guidance on tiered response, EDMR, and the action plan. It increased monitoring requirements to quarterly, and they provided for other organizational improvements. The remaining general permits that haven't been renewed yet will be renewed on their normal schedule. We're not changing the schedule to try and get these additional improvements in there. But at the time of each renewal, the general permits will be updated in a similar fashion to the ones that were updated this year. But until all those are done, the Stormwater program is going to be providing guidance to address the tiered response in the interim. Going on to individual permits, these are for facilities that don't qualify for a general permit. Like general permits, individual permits are publicly noticed for 30 days and they last for 5 years, or up to 5 years. Also, as long as the annual fees are paid up to date and a renewal application was received at least 180 days prior to the permit expiration, then the permit is administratively continued and discharge under the expired permit may continue until a new permit is issued. So with individual permits, like general permits, there have been a number of significant changes to the way they look. First, there's no longer a boilerplate attached to the permit. Rather, relevant language from the boilerplate has been moved into the body of the permit and put at the relevant locations within the permit. Second, monitoring requirements have been increased from semi-annually to quarterly for both quantitative and qualitative monitoring. EDMR guidance and timelines have been added and clarifications have been given for no discharge. So the next type of permit I'm going to talk about are no exposure certificates. These are for facilities that do not expose materials or operations to stormwater. The facilities are required to complete an annual self-certification, and there's no formal renewal every 5 years like other stormwater permits and certificates of coverage. Instead, the renewal is automatic as long as the site keeps up with its annual self-certification. Lastly, the construction general permit is for activities that disturb at least 1 acre or part of a common development plan at least 1 acre in size. They're also a second step after obtaining approval of the erosion and sediment control plan, and they must be terminated upon completion of the construction. The application process for construction general permits is now online, and everyone should have, this presentation should be available to everyone, so you should have these links, but I just wanted to show you, this is our general industrial permits page. So for the construction permits, we have this NCG01 electronic notice of intent. You click that link. There should be, you'll see these forms and you'll just go through, fill out all the information, hit next until you get through all the different categories. So kind of moving on to talk about Laserfish. Laserfish is an electronic storehouse for all the Stormwater program files. Currently, digital files are available for the industrial, MS4, and construction permits. Post-construction permits are currently being scanned and will be uploaded into Laserfish as they become available. So keep checking back. If it's not there, it will get there. Within Laserfish, permit files are grouped by permit type, then they're sorted by permit number. There's 2 different ways to access the permit files. One is to navigate through the Laserfish link, and a second way is to use the active Stormwater Permits app. So to look at the Stormwater link, or the Laserfish link itself.
And I'll just add for the audience, we do have a little bit of a delay from when Brianna changes screen, so it's not something on your end.
Oh, I apologize for that. So hopefully you can see the Laserfish website right now. So this is the Edmr Stormwater page. If there's individual permits here, I'm going to click on that. And you can see everything's listed in order, so you can just scroll to the permit you need. Or select any category you would like to check. So I'm next going to show you the active stormwater permits map. Are you able to see the map now?
Yep, it's getting more responsive, Brianna.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to select a permit at random. When you select it, the information will come up. If you just scroll down to the bottom, you'll see this electronic permit file here. This link, you'll hit more info, and it'll open up a new window. And once this loads, it will, oops, this is really taking a while. I apologize for this. So when it loads, it'll have all the documents related to that specific permit or certificate of coverage. Here we go. As you can see, these are directly all the files related to this particular permit. I would like to note that sometimes there is a cookie problem where if you click the links, they'll come in, it'll pop up and it'll say that there's an issue. It didn't do it this time, but all you have to do is hit log out. It'll come up with a login screen, a username and password. You will not change anything there. You're just going to hit login again, and it should bring up the main landing page for Laserfish, and you can navigate back to the permit you want to look for. Or if you don't want to have to navigate all the way back through, if you use the active stormwater permits map, you can just re-click the link again, and it should bring you directly to the file. All right, so going on to EDMR. As many of you are already aware, the Stormwater program is implementing the Electronic Data Monitoring Report System, EDMR for short. This is an electronic system where you can submit your monitoring data rather than having to mail in paper copies for your DMRs. We want to thank all of you who've already submitted your forms so far. I just wanted to give a little reminder that we only have one administrative person who's working on getting all those accounts set up. And there's thousands of you all. So if it's going to take a couple weeks for us to get back to you. But we are working on it. We're getting the account set up. So we appreciate your patience while we work through that. I'm just going to show you the EDMR website. Because one thing I want to point out is the 6-step process. So this is our EDMR website. And it has all the deadlines for the different types of permits, when you're supposed to start using EDMR. If you don't have an account, it still talks about how to submit paper DMRs, system requirements, everything like that. So the 6-step process walks you through how to go about getting your EDMR account. There's database information that we need to verify, submitting reports, setting up, all that. What I want to focus on is this step 5. Down here, we have the Stormwater EDMR user manual. And this is going to be a really great resource for all of you. It's the user guide, how to use the system. If you have any questions or issues, you can always reference this. Of course, stormwater permitting staff are also available to answer any questions you may have. But I just wanted to mention that this is here. I also want to point out that there is a difference between the stormwater EDMR and the wastewater EDMR. Getting your accounts is a little bit different. Things are handled a little bit differently. So I know a lot of people have both types of permits, but this 6-step process is just for the stormwater permits that you have. If you have any wastewater questions, please reach out to those folks. So Cromer is why we still require paper permit applications with the wet ink signatures to be submitted. Cromer provides a legal framework for the electronic reporting under all EPA environmental regulations, and subject e-reporting systems require EPA's approval. DEQ is working towards becoming Cromer compliant for applications and forms, but we're not there yet, and we don't have a timeline on when we will become Cromer compliant. The EDMR system is Cromer compliant, so that's why you're able to, once you have a verified EDMR account, you can enter, certify, and submit your data through there, and we don't need the paper copies anymore. So once we get Cromer compliant for applications forms, we won't need paper applications, but again, we're not there yet, but we are working towards it. So I also just wanted to mention that we have an e-payment system. This is where annual fees can be paid online for both individual and general industrial permits. I would like to note, though, that this is only for annual fees. Application fees and penalties cannot be paid through this portal. I'm just going to show you the system. So this is what it looks like. All you will do is where it says enter the permit number. I'm just going to pull an example one. When you pull it up, if there's any unpaid fees, it would list it here, and you can do it that way. That's just to show you. So I just wanted to throw up some additional resources. Some of these I've already talked about. But as I mentioned before, this presentation will be made available to you. So you should have links to all of these references, or you should have all these links for reference in the future. I would like to mention, though, while I'm here, so this is kind of our overview page. I just wanted to point out our updates for September and October. We do have those WOW webinars. We also have a renewal schedule, an audit schedule that we recently updated. We have our contacts list. We have a link to the Laserfish repository down here. And then we also have some brief discussions of the different permits and programs in the industrial. So that's all I had. I also wanted to mention that Brittany Carson has joined our team as the new Industrial General Permits Coordinator. So if you have any questions in the future, please feel free to reach out to myself or her. We're both relatively new, still getting to know the program. So if we don't know a question, the answer to a question, we might need to reach out to other staff, but we will get back to you on any questions you have. It might take us, a few days or something, but we will definitely get back to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. And just for the audience's benefit, Annette Lucas, who I'm not sure how long she ran the Stormwater group. She has just moved on to another opportunity, and I believe they're advertising for that supervisor. So I know the Edmr staff are working hard, and you guys have been great to keep our members up to date on everything that's going on. So I don't see any questions typed in, and I'm looking to see whether anybody's got a hand raised. And I don't see any. So Brianna, you must have done a great job. All right. We'll wait a minute or so just to make sure. But as we've mentioned before, if a speaker has shared their presentation with us, that will go up on our website along with the recordings. Behind the scenes right now, DEQ is transitioning our website between one version of our software and another. So we're sort of holding back on making changes to it. So there's not too many changes that have to be reviewed on double sites. But we will get that info up on our website as soon as we can. And so I still do not see questions or hand raised. So, all right, we are going to wrap it up for this morning. Remember, if you're joining us this afternoon, we start at 1:30 with air quality updates and a presentation on DEQ's use of drones. So everyone enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you back here at 1:30. Thank you for joining us.